Okay.
I went to one doctor. He was very dismissive. No, you're too young. I was 39.
Right.
Yeah, it's always been an issue all my life. I think from when I was a child. Girls and women, it's, they're a lot more quiet. They're a lot more, daydreaming. They'll be in a class daydreaming rather than bouncing off the walls.
Hello, my name's Charlie, the founder of LivedInsights, and welcome to the LivedInsights Podcast. We're going to be having conversations with many different people on many different topics to get their insights, their experiences, their knowledge, their wisdom to help other people. Please tell friends, tell family, tell colleagues, and without further ado, let's crack on with this episode. So, welcome to this episode of LivedInsights, and today's guest is Janneke. Hi, Janneke.
Hiya.
So the topics today are primarily ADHD, but also perimenopause.
Yeah.
So really interested to hear your insights on both these topics. We had a recent episode where a guy, Trevor, similar relation to myself, he talked about his ADHD. Really insightful, really interesting. So it'd be great to get a completely different perspective. And also perimenopause. Menopause being one of the topics with LivedInsights, and obviously perimenopause precedes that. So yeah, again, really interesting, something I know very little about. So yeah, let's get on with it.
Okay, perfect.
So, have you had a formal diagnosis of ADHD?
Yes, I did. A couple of years ago. I forget. I'm pretty sure I've written down 37, but it might have been 37, 38. So a few years ago now. I kind of started noticing a bit more of the symptoms. Working with a disability charity obviously helped because I was working with people with ADHD. And I noticed that I had a lot of similarities and a lot of things in common with them. They noticed, in meetings, I'd be fidgeting a lot, I'd be moving around, get distracted by pretty much everything. So yeah, I think...
That's fairly recently. So before then, you didn't really consider having ADHD?
Not at all, no.
You picked up on it from that, and then you decided to try and, let's look into this more, and you went down the route of getting a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went down the route of getting a private diagnosis, knowing how long the waiting lists are.
Okay.
So I think at that point, I was like, I think it was important for me to validate how I'd been feeling and get a bit more of an idea of, what it is I'm facing.
So from the time you first started thinking, okay, this could be me, to presumably making a call, sending an email, to go down the route of getting a diagnosis, what sort of period was that?
Probably only a couple of months.
Okay.
Being very impulsive.
Okay.
I got an idea in my head and I ran with it.
Yeah.
And like I said, because I went private, it was a pretty quick process, to be honest.
And can you tell us about that process?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I did a bit of research online, found a couple of places that did private diagnosis. Most of them did remote meetings, which works for me. Not needing to travel down to London to go and do that, because that would be a whole nother stressful situation. So I found one that had quite a short waiting list. Probably booked an appointment and got one within 3 weeks.
Okay.
Obviously, it costs a lot of money to get a private diagnosis, but I think
Can you say how much approximately?
I think in total, it probably cost me about £1,000. Probably about 400 or 500 for the actual assessment and diagnosis itself. Then you need to pay for the report that you get, and then what they do is they send a shared agreement to your GP.
Right.
And then what they do is they kind of have a period where they will send you some medication after a discussion. You probably have, I think I had 3 months of 3 different types of medication. So I started on Elvance for a month on the 30 milligrams. Had a meeting at the end of the month, talked about how that felt, how it was going for me. They upped it twice. So I went up to 40 milligrams and then 50 milligrams.
Okay.
Kind of reporting back at the end of each month to them how it all was going.
So we'll probably come on to medication and treatments and how you have dealt with it,
Yeah.
are dealing with it. But just want to go back to that, the assessment. So is that a case of questionnaires, an interview? Is it, how rigorous is that process?
It's both. So you do get a questionnaire that you need to fill out to begin with. It's a standard questionnaire, I think, for kind of for the diagnosis. They take that away, they have a look at it, they book you in for an assessment interview, which I did remotely via, I think it was one of their kind of like a Zoom portal. So you join, the doctor joins, they go through the questionnaire that you filled out already, and then just loads of questions about, my childhood, growing up, traits that I've noticed throughout the years of growing up.
And while you were going through that process, filling in the questions, speaking to the doctor or the consultant, was it scary? Was it, were you concerned? Were you anxious? Or was it actually, this really does feel like this is what I need to be doing?
It was terrifying, mainly because, again, it's something that's out of the ordinary. I don't particularly like delving too much into my, into my past, my childhood. I'm a very private person when it comes to that. So it was a bit strange talking to someone about, childhood issues that I may have had. And also, I think because you're being assessed, for me, it felt like going into an exam.
Right.
What if I say the wrong thing? What if I, say something that I shouldn't say,
But then it's not pass or fail.
No.
But you felt it kind of was
absolutely. It did feel a bit like that. But it was fine. The doctor made me feel at ease,
good.
Talked through it. There was a lot that kind of came up that he said, have you noticed that you do this, for example?
And was it specifically for an ADHD diagnosis, or did it cover other?
Yeah, it was just ADHD. Okay. I mean, he did mention a few traits that I had mentioned that seemed more on the autism side. Okay. But I paid for the ADHD assessment, so they stuck with the ADHD assessment.
Okay. We might come back to that, but and then fairly quickly you got the report, the results, a confirmation that you had ADHD, and did that also suggest that you'd had ADHD your whole life, or? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was your reaction to that?
A bit of shock. But then after a while, you kind of have a think about what's written in the report. And not long after my diagnosis, I found, the certificate of achievements that you get from school, the burgundy kind of folder that you get with all your things in it. Reading things from my tutors at school saying easily distracted, needs to pay attention more. And you go,
so things started to make a lot more sense.
It did, absolutely.
So was there a part relief with the diagnosis?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. It was part relief, confirmation of, some of the things that I've always thought. I felt pressure to be a high achiever, and that was difficult. School was difficult for me. I mean, I passed what I needed to pass to get on in life, and I ended up going to university, and so I got through, but it was very difficult. And I think looking back on it, it was kind of like just something lifted off my shoulders. Okay, right, that makes sense now. I think I've written a blog that's titled "It Finally Makes Sense." Okay. So I kind of go through that a little bit in my written pieces as well.
We'll talk about that later, because you're doing loads to raise awareness, help other people, explain your situation. So we'll come on to the book you've written and the blogs. But I can imagine there is that sense of relief. Things start to make sense. I mean, the only thing I can compare it to myself, although I kind of didn't have essentially a formal diagnosis, was the depression I went through many years ago, where once I finally understood that, there was that real sense of relief, and it makes sense. But then there was, that's good, but actually I'm still depressed. How do I manage this? How do I cope with this? How do I deal with it or overcome it? So having your diagnosis helped. Yeah, clarity, made sense, relief, etc. But then what?
Hyperfocus. I used my hyperfocus to just delve straight into it.
Researching and
I've got something that I know this is what I've been struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
I now know what it is, therefore I can now delve into it deeper.
Okay.
I can, do research on, how to make my life easier, how to adjust to the diagnosis. And what I found in researching, and I felt this to an extent myself, a bit of grief of all the time that you felt like you've lost,
Mm-hmm.
and
a sadness that you...
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but you can't turn back the clock.
No, you
can't
can't
change that. So, okay, because I think most people, if they were asked, what's their understanding of HD, will probably be around, on the one hand, lack of attention, lack of concentration, focus, etc. But then on the other side can be, as you say, hyper focus really onto something and give it, 100% full on.
Yeah.
And there's that disparity there. And depending on what it is, they can not care at all and not be focused, or complete opposite. So you channeled that side of your ADHD into, I'm going to understand this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I was diagnosed with the combined ADHD, so
Right.
not the hyperactivity by itself, not the inattention by itself, but mine was both. So
Okay.
I think maybe that's also why it might not have been picked up, because I'm not totally hyperactive all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I can be very chilled, very relaxed. I'm not inattentive all the time. So it's that combined kind of bit that I think.
And can you then perhaps describe, some of the traits, some of the behaviours, some of the bad, some of the good that you've gone through with your life? You talked about some of the issues at school and university, and you pressure to be a high achiever and all these different things. But how would you describe what it has been like with ADHD, the good and the bad?
I think what I did find was that I had been masking a lot during my life, especially in my career and my work.
Okay.
I work as a HR manager, so it's pretty intense on most days.
And presumably you're dealing with lots of other people in that.
I'm dealing with lots of other people's problems. So you have to put a bit of a mask on, and I'm going through a lot, but take that away, focus on other people's problems. And I think that to an extent is what made me good at my job, because I could just cut it off, disassociate. I don't want to think about my things. I will completely disassociate from the problems I've got, and I'll focus on helping other people.
Okay.
But that over time, it's exhausting. Masking all day, every day when you're at work is just absolutely exhausting. And when you get home, you feel drained. You feel like you've not been true to yourself. And I think that's one of the senses of relief that I've got, is I feel like I can drop that mask now. I can, be my strange, quirky self in front of people, and not be concerned about it. And that sense of relief is huge.
Okay. Yeah. And do you feel, obviously in the last few years, ADHD has got a lot more attention, and perhaps more understanding, more people are being diagnosed, more people are talking about it. Have you felt that's helped your situation, or just that there's more awareness around it? Or presumably there's still a long, long way to go, but... There is still, I'd say, a very long way to go. But I think with platforms like TikTok, for example, there's a lot of information on there, a lot of people. And again, the way the algorithms work, if you look at certain things and you have certain quirks, it picks up on that. It picks up on it, and it will show you more and more information about it. Okay. So I think that's where a lot of awareness. Always a good way.
In a good way, I think.
Okay.
It's definitely sparked a lot of things in me, where I've seen videos and they've gone, well, this is what I do, and I go, I do that as well. I then look into it, and told
anyone else? As in, have you said to someone, I think I recognise things in you, and perhaps you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I recognise it in a lot of people around me now.
Okay. So it's one thing recognising and thinking, but actually telling someone, that's presumably a whole other,
Yeah, I think you do get a lot of people that kind of do it's slightly dismissive, but, everyone has ADHD traits. Mm-hmm. Everyone does this thing. Kind of, it feels like it dismisses it a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yes, everyone's individual. Everyone has their own kind of quirks and things. But I think that does feel very dismissive to people who have had a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. Everyone's got a touch of ADHD. Yeah. Well, they don't. Scientifically speaking, people with ADHD, their brains look different under a scan. Mm-hmm. The way that they think, the way that they go about their daily life is completely different. Okay. So while a lot of people may have traits, it doesn't necessarily mean they do have ADHD.
Okay. So I feel we haven't really gone into some of the other issues that you've experienced during your life because of ADHD. So what, you talked about being exhausted from just having to mask stuff and not being yourself or true to yourself. What other things have there been that?
I think one of the things that is misdiagnosed in people, and that's true for myself as well. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety many years ago. I was put on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication. Looking back on it, I'm not sure whether it was anxiety and depression. It might have just been the ADHD that was undiagnosed. Okay. So again, thinking about, what I put myself through. And
so you're saying, so some of the symptoms, behaviours of ADHD could appear to, or very similar to symptoms of depression, anxiety, and therefore they're more well known, more common. Yeah. Go to a doctor, they go, well, let's try this medication or let's try that. Okay, so, and that's happened to you in the past?
Yeah, that's happened to me.
Okay. Yeah. And do you feel, so that prescription or that diagnosis you felt was probably wrong because it's dealing with the wrong cause?
Yeah, I think a lot of people that have ADHD have said, I've been on antidepressants for a while, didn't really do anything. It's probably because that wasn't the main issue. There's a lot of people that have kind of I always get the word wrong, comorbidities. So it's you've got ADHD. Basically more than two or more existing conditions, usually mental health conditions that kind of are linked together. So with ADHD, autism's very prevalent as well.
So you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
So you've not gone for a formal diagnosis of autism, been on that spectrum, but you think there's a good chance that you probably are somewhere along there?
Definitely, yeah. I think.
And why haven't you sought out anything formal?
Mainly the cost, to be honest. It does cost a lot of money, and now that, like you've said, a lot more information is out there about ADHD, it has become more of a talked about issue, and because of that, prices have hiked up. So what I paid a couple of years ago,
waiting lists have got longer with the NHS.
Absolutely, Even with the private diagnosis, the waiting lists have got longer, and the cost has got pretty extortionate, to be honest.
And presumably, given what you've gone through with the ADHD and that process of diagnosis, and then the research you've done and the knowledge you've built up, being someone who can then go, well, I'm pretty sure I'm on the spectrum of autism. In some ways, you don't need a diagnosis. What's it going to achieve? What difference is that going to make?
It's not going to achieve anything. I think I've got the ADHD diagnosis. I know that, that's what I have. I don't particularly like a label, but it's a label, and it did drive me to kind of research it, find out a lot more information. But I think with the autism side of it, I don't feel like I don't need another label.
I mean, I know more about autism than I do ADHD, but still my knowledge is very limited. But I am aware that there is many more people on the spectrum that have got any kind of diagnosis, and many people are completely unaware.
Yeah.
I often meet people and I'm very sure they are on the spectrum, some further along than others, and quite often I feel like I want to ask them, because I suspect that some of them perhaps, I am, I've got Asperger's or I am autistic, but many would be like, what? No, I haven't even considered that. And also I think, my understanding is that with females, they are better at masking it, and there's a higher level of autism with females that goes undiagnosed because they can get on with their life because they're much better at masking it. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. I think also while you're at school as well, the ADHD in boys and men looks totally different. They are more on the hyperactive side most of the time. So in a classroom, for example, the hyperactive boy running around the classroom.
I mean, that's the standard, isn't it? It's the guy who can't concentrate, who's doing all sorts. Whereas
with girls and women, it's, they're a lot more quiet. They're a lot more, daydreaming. They'll be in a class daydreaming rather than bouncing off the walls like the boys would do.
I mean, this might be perhaps saying the wrong things here, but they're generally more mature and therefore probably more aware of certain behaviours they need to mask and just not do that or calm that down or hide this. So that additional maturity, I'm generalising, but I think that probably plays a big part as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different topic, but obviously I think girls are, you need to sit down, you need to get on, you need to concentrate, whereas boys, I think, have more of that lenience towards, he's just hyperactive, he just needs to get some energy out, whereas girls usually, they'll sit there, they'll get distracted, they'll doodle, they'll, be more on the creative side of, I used to doodle all over all of my school books. So,
and be less
it presents
troublesome.
completely differently.
So, yeah, that makes sense. I hope you're finding this episode interesting, informative and beneficial. And if so, please like, comment, subscribe, follow, and keep watching and listening to future episodes. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your colleagues. Also, if you can, go to the LivedInsights.com website and fill in an online questionnaire. You'll be helping so many other people understand more about these different topics and issues. So remember, tune in to Lived Insights, the conversation, and the website. Thank you. So with the autism side, is that something you're researching more of, looking into, or are you just going, it's okay, it doesn't really, I'm used to this now, I'm just going to crack on as I am? Or is there a part of you that wants to know more, understand more, do something about that as well?
I think I have a generally good understanding, working in a disability charity. I work with people, autistic people, on a daily basis. So I think I've got a good enough understanding of it that I don't want to, and again, because it's undiagnosed and I'm giving advice to people, I'm writing blogs, I'm writing books, I don't want to give advice on something that I'm not diagnosed in. So it might come across that I don't know enough about that. I don't, it's not diagnosed, you might not have it. Why are you giving information or giving advice on it? So, it's there in the background, but I don't, I feel no need to kind of push forward with it and get a diagnosis. Okay,
that makes sense as well. So going back to the ADHD then, the sort of day-to-day traits, physically, emotionally, mentally, can you give me a bit more, some examples perhaps of how it does affect you? And again, I'm very conscious of getting across the positives as well as some of the negatives, some of the issues you have with it, but also some of the superpowers that come with it as well.
I think definitely what I'd call one of the better traits is the hyperfocus. And that only comes when you're interested in the project that you're doing or the work that you're doing or the research you're doing. I feel sometimes like I can do a whole day's work in 3 hours because I've just got my head down, I've got my headphones on, I'm focused, I'm into it. And that really does help. You know, I have my to-do lists on a daily and weekly basis. Some days I will stare at that list and not want to do the simplest thing on it, or not feel like I can do the smallest task. Whereas when that hyperfocus clicks on,
does it
that's
have to be something you want to do, something you're interested in, or can you use that for all the stuff you don't want to do? But okay, I'm going to get my super focus head on here and go for it. You're saying it has to be something you're interested
usually
in.
it has to be something I'm interested in. I really do struggle with the mundane tasks. It's, you know, it really does take a lot to go, I really need to tick this off my list. And what I tend to do is I tend to kind of play a game with myself. Right, I've got out of my list to do today, I'm going to do this, this and this. If I do that, I will then start this project. So I'll give myself, you know, incentive to get stuck into the thing that I want to do by ticking off 2 or 3 of the small tasks.
Okay. And presumably this is both work related and in your personal life. You're having to reward yourself with what you really want to focus on by doing the others. Okay. Yeah. And that works pretty well?
That works pretty well for me, I think looking back...
I think a lot of the downside in real life for people with ADHD is because they find it hard to concentrate on certain things and do the mundane things, they don't do it, and then there's consequences of that. Yeah. You know, if they don't do that piece of work, or if they don't turn up to something, or they don't do what they said they're going to do, then obviously there are consequences. Yeah. So you managed to manage that pretty well.
I think I've always managed it without realising that I'm managing it. Simple things like I love a to-do list. You know, I've tried a couple of different apps that kind of help you with, you know, have a tick list of what you need to do for the day, and you've even put the simple small things in it. Brush your teeth, have a shower. These things, you know, everyday things. But I think when you're having a bad day, just that tiny little step of going, right, I need to go and brush my teeth, or I need to go and have a shower. It seems a lot more daunting than it should be. So having these apps with tick lists, they're great for some people. For me, I found it too overwhelming. If I didn't tick one of them off, or if I didn't tick all of them off, I'd feel like a failure. I'd put more pressure on myself. So a written to-do list. I'll have my main to-do list, and then sometimes I'll get a post-it note out and go, right, out of what I've got to do, what are the 3 things that I can tick off today to make me feel at the end of the day like I've achieved something. There could be small things, there could be big things.
What that sense of achievement, that needing to do something, finish something, get something out, is that an ADHD thing, or is that a you thing? Is that because
it could be both?
I mean, obviously there's upsides, there's good things about having, you know, that sense of I want to achieve something, I want to get something done, and sounds like more often than not you do, but they're putting the pressure on yourself, they're thinking you failed if you haven't done that. That's difficult, getting that balance.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult, and I think the one thing that I've started to implement in my life is, do you know what? I can't do it all. If I achieve the small things in a day, then I've won. I think being kind to yourself is the biggest thing. You're going to have really bad days. You're going to have really good days. You just need to go with the flow and accept the bad days.
And before your diagnosis and understanding or knowledge, would that have been different? Would you have beaten yourself up about things?
Absolutely.
One of the real benefits of getting a diagnosis, getting that extra knowledge, that wisdom now, is things like that. You're able to go, look, I can't do everything. I'm human. Yeah. You know. Okay. So what other things would you say you've changed as a result of having that knowledge?
Definitely being kinder to myself. It's definitely, I will keep saying this to anyone who struggles on a daily basis with ADHD. Just be kind to yourself. You know, this is how you're wired. You can try all the tips and hints and tricks that Some people do. What works for me is not going to work for someone else.
Sure.
You know, and thinking, you know, well, that person's got ADHD and they've got a thriving career, and, you know, their house is tidy, and, you know, simple things like that. You know, they think, oh, how are they achieving that?
You said you have to enjoy being hyper-focused, so you have to enjoy tidying up.
Well, yeah, I'm lucky that I do have that. I'm very tidy naturally, I think. Yeah. And that, again, that's something that I've been doing all my life that is actually really helpful for someone with ADHD. You've got a cluttered mind. If you have a cluttered space, it makes it worse. I think the space and the environment that you're in has a massive impact on your mental health. Okay. And I've been doing that all my life. What about
things like sleep? Because again, a lot of my understanding is, you know, sleep can be really affected, and that whole energy thing, and, you know, how do you deal with sleep? Has that been an issue? Have you managed it? Have you changed?
Yeah, it's always been an issue all my life. I think from when I was a child, I've never been able to sleep through the night and wake up in the morning and go, I'm really refreshed now. Again, I think there's several kind of things to that. I think, one, your brain's going at 200 miles an hour. When I go to bed at night and all the lights are off and it's quiet, I'm still thinking about everything. I'm still thinking about what I've done today, what I didn't achieve today, what I have achieved today, what I need to do tomorrow. And then again, like a few nights ago, I knew I had to get up early the next day. So I went to bed on time, but my brain was going, you need to wake up early. This is the first time in a long time you've had to set an alarm and wake up really early. My brain couldn't shut off because I was worrying about the next day. So yeah, sleep, disrupted sleep has been a problem.
That's a work in progress in terms of
it's
managing
a work in progress. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think I've put in, well, no, maybe I've not put it in, but I think having a job at the moment that is very flexible with my hours has helped me, because I generally, on a day-to-day basis, I do not set an alarm. I will naturally wake up at around 8, half 8. Yeah. If not, my lovely partner comes up and wakes me up at 9 o'clock at the very latest. So your employer, they're giving you flexibility. They're very understanding. They're very understanding. Yeah. It's a disability charity, so I'd be quite concerned if they weren't understanding of the disability. But presumably, there's thousands and thousands of people who are employed with companies, organisations where that level of understanding doesn't exist, and therefore it must be a constant battle trying to fit into what they're supposed to do. But if only the organisations understood better, they'd be able to get more out of, you know, the strengths, the superpowers, focus, all the good positive things with ADHD they could utilise more. So I guess we're still a long way from that, but there does seem to be, as we mentioned before, more awareness, better understanding, and I guess it's twofold. It is the individual has a responsibility as well as the employer. But in your case, work is good. Is good right now. You know, my employer is very understanding. And in the past, has there been issues? Yes, there's been lots of issues in the past. Working for bigger corporations that aren't maybe as understanding, having strict deadlines, especially within HR. You know, you get a lot of deadlines, but you also have lots of stuff coming in on a daily basis that you're not prepared for. So being able to stick to deadlines when you've got a lot of other things coming in it's very distracting, funnily enough. I think maybe I chose the wrong career, because having you know that deadline looming plus other work coming in that needs my instant attention, being able to prioritize that has been pretty difficult for me. And again, the inflexibility of some organizations, you know, you have to be at work at 8 o'clock. I'm not very good in the morning. In fact, I'm terrible in the morning, you know, and having that, you know, you have to be here at 8, you have to be on the ball, you have to get straight into it. It didn't work long term for me. So but I'm sure there's a massive long way to go overall. But there definitely seems a sense that with
more understanding, there is that more flexibility, and people can speak out more and explain the situation, and things can be adapted and be more flexible. So what you said there in terms of career, right now it's good because they understand, you understand. In the past you've not understood, they've not understood, and it's been really difficult.
Very difficult, yeah.
Okay, and what's your thoughts on, like, if people have got ADHD or suspect they might have, and they're really struggling with their work, their career, etc. What would your advice be, whether it's from your personal, with your HR hat on, what they perhaps could do about it?
I mean, I think definitely, I don't think people need a diagnosis to be able to ask for reasonable adjustments at work.
You said it's up to £1,000 privately, and with the NHS it could take possibly years to get.
Absolutely. So I think waiting lists are up to about 8 years now for NHS diagnosis. So
okay, so it's almost not possible.
Not possible, yeah.
Okay.
I think if you suspect you have ADHD, and I think, it comes down to the individual person, how confident they feel about looking into it, talking to their employers about it. But it also is, on the employer side, are they understanding? Are you talking to the right person? If you talk to your boss and they don't really have a good understanding, or they're very dismissive of it, you can go to HR, and hopefully they would have a lot more of an empathetic kind of view on it. But I think
since you've been diagnosed, and presumably more people are aware, and you've told people, and we'll come on to it soon, that you've written a book, etc. So what's the reaction been? Have people been really, really good? Have they been okay, well, whatever? Or have you had any bad reactions, dismissive?
No bad reactions, no dismissive reactions. I had a lot of, oh, okay, you've just caught on now, have you? A lot of people thinking, I'm not surprised at all. There was quite a few people I told that just went, you didn't know that.
Okay.
It's weird because, again, no one said anything to me. There's been traits that I've had since my childhood that it wasn't picked up on. Sensory issues was a big one for me as a child. I couldn't wear too many layers because the layers got a bit too much for me. I used to wear my socks inside out because the seam irritated me as a sensory issue. That was never picked up on. So a lot of people did go, obviously.
Makes sense. And, okay. So let's put this across. If people go, well, everyone's got issues. Everyone's got something wrong with them. You're playing the ADHD card now. What do you want? Sympathy? Do you want special this? What? There's going to be people like that. And in some ways you can understand it because in the last few years there's been so much different issues and awareness and different day for this, day for that. And what would you say in response to people who might have that sort of view?
I think being dismissive of someone telling you that's going to hit them hard. One of the kind of issues that people struggle with ADHD is RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So someone dismissing you instantly when you've opened up to them and you felt confident enough to open up to them, that can be heartbreaking. I think that's, if that happens to someone, that might just completely shut them down. They might not want to talk about it again. They might not want to discuss it with anyone or open up to anyone. So it can be very dismissive. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, everyone's kind of on the spectrum a little bit. Again, I think that can be very dismissive of what people are going through. What I don't like is when people, you may come across people that say, well, I'm always late because I've got ADHD. I have ADHD. I'm never late. I think it's down to your personal understanding of what the issues are, and you need to take some responsibility for your actions and yourself, and learn about it, learn what you can do to make your life easier, to make the struggles a bit less, and no,
I totally agree. I mean, I think so many issues, people, different conditions, mental health, physical health, and unless you've gone through something the same or very similar yourself, or know someone really, really close to you, so you've got that sort of inside knowledge and understanding, then you shouldn't be judging other people, because you just don't have that knowledge, so you can't judge. And I think part of the whole point of Lived Insights is to get across some of that knowledge, some of that understanding on these different topics, so that people aren't so judgmental, won't make so many assumptions. So I think, what you said today, again, has been really helpful, just to bring up some awareness and different aspects of ADHD. But I'm really interested in the book that you've written, and I'm assuming that with your hyper focus, you were sort of, putting thousands of words a day into it, and really, and you probably didn't take that long to do it. If that was something you're really interested in and wanted to do it, which is great. And I think I've written books, and it's difficult, it's hard, it's it is tough. So I think, first of all, well done. But secondly, tell me more about that book. And why you wanted to write it.
I think for me, I started doing blogs to begin with. I did a couple through work. We kind of putting blogs out about, different disabilities and how people, might struggle, what you can do to improve, your lifestyle, and making basically people a bit more aware of the daily struggles that people have. So I started doing a few blogs with work. It then turned into I want to do some more blogs outside of work. I want to start raising a bit more awareness. And for me, I think effective communication for me can be difficult sometimes.
Okay.
I like written instructions. They're so much easier than verbal instructions to me. They will just go straight over my head, in one ear out the other. If I don't get very clear written instructions, I find it difficult. So I looked into that, and I thought, do you know what, maybe writing stuff down will help. And for me, I wanted to write to get my feelings out, because I do find it difficult to talk about, some of the struggles that I have. So writing it down just felt so much easier for me.
Okay.
And with writing it down, I'm clarifying things in my own head. I'm writing things down and reading back on it going, I didn't even think I felt this way, but I do. And I think it started off as I'm writing it for me.
Okay. So what's it called?
The first book is, it's a short ebook, and it's called Succeeding with ADHD, Strategies for Living Your Best Life.
Okay.
So it basically goes through
it's going on your experience, but what can really work to help with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I tried so many different things, so many different methods of, getting organised. I've tried so many different apps to help organise my life. I've tried so many and failed at so many.
Okay.
But that's fine. It's perfectly fine. I'm totally fine with failures now, because it means that I've learned something, I've moved on, and I'm going to find a better solution.
Yeah. And you don't beat yourself up.
No,
like
not anymore.
Used to. Yeah.
Not anymore, no. And I think writing that down into a book, it might not help everyone, but even if it helps a couple of people, it was worth it.
Sure.
So it's basically just a list of different strategies that I've input in my life, some of which have worked, some of which haven't. But again, everyone's individual. And I do state this in the book as well. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Not everything is going to work for everyone, but if it helps a few people,
and
then
where can people get access to the book or download
so the book
it?
Is on Amazon. So I self-published on Amazon. It's on Kindle Unlimited for free. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get it for free for a period of time. And people can just download the book. And they'll need to download the Kindle app as well. But
Okay, we'll make sure that it's, whether it's on the on the podcast somehow or in the comments, so people can access that. So again, Lived Insights all about providing knowledge, experiences from people with lived experience and gaining their insights to help others. But not so much, well, to help people going through similar issues, but more so their family, their partners, their friends, their colleagues, to get a better understanding. So what would your advice be to anybody who knows somebody with ADHD, or what would your advice be to your colleagues, your friends, your partners, to better understand who you are and what ADHD has, I was going to say what not given you, but what ADHD is to you. What would be your advice to them?
I mean, I suppose as the person with ADHD, you're gonna want to look into it a bit more. For me, just talking to my partner, my friends, my family about, I learned this today about ADHD. Didn't realise that I did this, but I do. And just communicating that to people around you, I think is the biggest thing for me. And having people around you, and I've been so lucky that, again, my work, my friends, my family, my partner have been super supportive in, learning about ADHD with me. They've been part of the journey of learning, like a typical ADHDer. I think once I get focused on something, I will talk about it for hours with someone. And I think having that discussion with them,
so just bringing their level of knowledge up,
yeah,
helps them to understand more, and then naturally that helps you, because you feel like, they don't think I'm some, going crazy or something, something wrong with me in that sense. It's just that explains it, and then you can presumably focus more on the positives, and the good side to ADHD. Okay. Is there anything else you want to mention around your ADHD, this subject matter, before we move on?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit, and obviously, if people want to learn a bit more, just go online, do some research, and obviously my book will have a bit of information, but it's mainly about tips on what to do to kind of help with the ADHD.
Brilliant. Okay, so the other topic that I'm assuming you're currently going through, and you've got, because of that, a real interest in this, and it's perimenopause. So it's like the precursor to menopause. And up until I set up LivedInsights, I literally knew nothing about the menopause. And with people filling in the online questionnaires, and please fill in online questionnaires on the website on any of the topics, really, really helpful to gain your knowledge, to help other people. I've been like, wow, this is, there's so much I've learned, and perhaps naively, I put it as menopause without really understanding anything about perimenopause before we came up with the questions and everything else. And there's an argument to say that it should be a separate topic, but as yet we're not doing that. But can you then talk to me about your experience so far, and also I'm interested in, because of that, because you're in the process, inevitably at some point you're going to be going into the menopause, and is that now you're in a much better position going into that because you've got so much more knowledge? So start us off with your current situation then.
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely learning about it, and I myself, I've never heard of perimenopause up until a few years ago. I thought, you get to around 50, you have the menopause, you go through the menopause, that's it. Yeah,
because menopause doesn't sound great, but perimenopause, that sounds even
terrible. It sounds interesting. So I think what happens, and there is a very big connection between ADHD and perimenopause as well.
Okay.
Perimenopausal symptoms and drop-in of estrogen within your body will accentuate ADHD symptoms.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that is how I realised. I think when I got my diagnosis around the same time, if not maybe, a year, half a year after that, my symptoms were getting so much worse. And I was like, is it because I've just been diagnosed and I'm learning about this that I'm my symptoms are getting worse. And then, I spoke to a friend of mine whose wife was going through menopause, and he said, it sounds like you're getting similar symptoms to her.
Okay.
He said it's worth looking into, buy the Davina book. Absolutely, massive insights in there.
Yeah.
And obviously within that book.
Interestingly, on the questionnaires, it comes up a lot, the Davina book. I mean, she's obviously been a big part of raising the awareness, which is great, because much more awareness, much more people talking about it, and as a result, loads more experts and influencers and all sorts going on. So, okay, that's So I read the book. Obviously, another ADHD impulse. I hit the buy now button. I was sat there reading it the next day, and it does have a lot in the book about perimenopause as well. Right.
And it's like you said, it's not very well known. I think people just assume that the leading up to it is
for those that don't know, it's. I mean, generally, the menopause tends to be kind of sort of around 50, and for a few years leading up to that is the perimenopause. It tends to be, on average, in the sort of mid-40s, that the perimenopause stage. But it can affect people from really early on to much later. It's a huge range of ages. And the perimenopause tends to last 3-4 years on average.
I think I've seen several different kind of timestamps on it, but I think if you want to call a wide range, in between 4 and 10 years, it can be up to 10 years.
Okay.
And like you said, it can start as early as mid-30s. I mean, I was 38, 39 at the time when I started noticing it, started, reading up on it.
Yeah.
And again, I think because it accentuated the ADHD symptoms, there was a lot of confusion. You get brain fog with ADHD, you get brain fog with perimenopause.
Okay.
Joint pain was one that I noticed quite early on. Joint pain is, it's debilitating sometimes. And, up until then, I was relatively fit and healthy, go out for walks with the dog every day, and it started getting more and more painful. I was starting to get problems with my hips.
Just pick up on that, because I know that we didn't mention it before, but one of the things that you do to help with your ADHD is exercise and being active, being fit, and I know you said that's been really, really helpful, and it's a very effective way of helping you with ADHD. But then if you're limited or can't do that as much because of the perimenopause, that's presumably going to create issues.
It's going to create more issues, I think, and also with perimenopause and menopause, I think a lot of women do gain extra weight, which then that will demotivate you. Maybe you'll start exercising a little less. You might start stress eating because you think this is happening. I'm
become a vicious circle quite easily.
It really does. It can become a vicious circle quite easily. So I think that interlink between them as well. Like you've said, exercise is great for ADHD. It's also great for perimenopausal symptoms as well as nutrition. And again, that's something with ADHD that I found was quite a big thing to kind of manage the symptoms. So that interlinks with both of them. Exercise, nutrition, really important for both.
Yeah, and you focus a lot on that.
Yeah, I focused a lot on that more recently. I think one of the things I've changed is instead of doing, a lot of high impact exercise, I've taken it down a notch. Yoga, it's better for the joint pain. You're still moving, you're still doing something. And weightlifting as well is a big one. When you start dropping your estrogen levels, your muscles start, disappearing pretty quickly. And the more you can do to kind of eat more protein, do more weightlifting, that
keeping
again,
the muscle mass.
Keeping your muscle mass strong is very important, because again, when your muscles start going away, your joints will start aching because they don't have that support system there. So that's doing a lot of research into that has been very interesting as well. And again, I'm seeing the links between the perimenopause and ADHD, and it's been very interesting learning about all of this.
I mean, in a way, it's really good timing for you that you've come up just at the time the perimenopause was coming into play. You've had that ADHD diagnosis, and you've then focused on the understanding, the knowledge, all of that, and actually, more than most people, you probably got that awareness as to what can help you, especially with your diet, your food, and the exercise and activities. But are there other things that you're doing that are specifically to help with the perimenopause?
I don't, because it's very difficult to and again, this is a massive topic about going to the doctor, trying to get help. I am very much into using natural kind of remedies to help. So I've done a lot of research into that. Things like wild yam cream helps with menopausal symptoms, and again, the diet, exercise, nutrition is really, really important as well. But it is very difficult going to a doctor and saying, these are the symptoms I have. Perimenopause is a symptom-based diagnosis, and because they do link to other things, such as depression and anxiety, again, going back to that, same with ADHD, if you go to a doctor and say, this is how I'm feeling, they'll go, you're depressed, here's some antidepressants. You've got anxiety, here's the medication.
Reading a lot of the questionnaires from people feeling the menopause, the amount of people who, it came across, certainly in many cases, where people spent years going to their doctor and were being dismissed with, or maybe not dismissed, but, it's something else, treat it for something else. And all along it was, perimenopause and then menopause. And on the one hand, we all know the NHS is under huge pressure. It's difficult to get an appointment, let alone then getting what you might want from it, that works or that fits in or having the time to go through everything. But then at the same time, it will take a lot of time and effort to get the understanding, the knowledge yourself to then go, right, well, I'm going to try this, see if this works for me, or this might be beneficial. And it's really difficult. I don't know what the answers are. I mean, I'm a big believer in, for trying to find out for yourself and researching and what works best for you, because everybody's different. But you're in this situation where it's great, there's a load more awareness, loads more information, yet, we don't know what necessarily is the right thing, or are we missing out on something that could really work, etc. So it's difficult for everybody, but is your advice to try and learn as much for yourself, try things out, see what does or doesn't work?
Yeah, I think for me it was the same as with the ADHD diagnosis, trial and error. I've tried lots of different things that might help. Things like trying ashwagandha, for example, natural remedies, up in my B12 vitamins, iron, because I do have quite a few deficiencies, when I go to the doctor and get blood tests. But because it's symptom-based, I think for me, one of the things I started doing was I researched it, found a list of, this is how many perimenopausal symptoms they are. I wrote down what symptoms I was having. It's very strange because you come across some symptoms and you go, that's a really odd one. Itching at night, for example, that's a strange one. 2-3 in the morning, you wake up and you just really itchy. And
it's interesting to say that, because again, one of the big things that came out of all the questionnaires to date are the huge range of symptoms. Whereas most people assume menopause, it's hot flushes, sweating at night, a bit bad temper, or
mood swings.
Mood swings. But that's just a tiny
massive range. There's a huge list, and I think definitely for anyone who thinks that they're going through perimenopause, look at the symptoms, write down what ones you're having, go to your doctor, because it is a symptom-based diagnosis, not bloods. You can do bloods, and that does help with the diagnosis, but it has to be done at exactly the right time of the month, and if you don't do it, it skews the blood results. So it is...
And keep pushing if you're not satisfied, because again,
pushing.
That's come out a lot, where people have said they've had to see a different doctor, or keep pushing, or keep... And I guess most people will just not do that, as in they'll go, okay, that's what I've been told, or that's
Yeah.
not what it is, or I haven't got the time or the energy or the strength to go and sort of be proactive and getting something else done. But this is serious. This is going to be going through this for years, and it's going to be your whole massive part of your life. So as much as you can do for yourself, but being proactive and getting as much information.
Yeah, I did. I went and got private blood tests done.
Okay.
I thought that was my first step, I think, into going, I think it could be this, and because it's done privately, you can choose exactly when you do the blood test. So I did it on the exact day that I needed to do it, which meant the blood test came out with the results that were needed. The doctor said, look, your levels have dropped, this is out of range. It could be, several different things, and obviously don't trust Dr. Google, because, you'll come up with a range of different issues, One of them was,
way up.
Yeah, exactly. You could be in perimenopause, you could have cancer, you could have, several other problems, and you don't obviously want to give yourself anxiety over what the issues are. But I think definitely looking into it yourself, getting bloods done, keeping a list of the symptoms. And I've seen 3 different doctors just for, one issue. Okay. I went to one doctor, he was very dismissive. No, you're too young. I was 39, 38, 39 at the time. And he said, no, you're too young. I was like, you do realise it can start at, mid-30s? No, you're too young. Okay, on to the next doctor. Okay. These are my symptoms. What can I do? And again, she point blank looked at me and said, what do you want us to do about it? Everyone goes through this. I was like, well, okay. that was an interesting one, Went back into the car, just started crying. I was like, just so dismissive. So keep trying. Keep going back until you find someone who is understanding.
I think, ultimately, it's your life. You've got to deal with this. And for women, everyone will have to go through this. So, be proactive, push. Yeah. If it doesn't feel right, try and do something about it and build up that knowledge. Thank you so much for your insights, both on ADHD and the perimenopause. And I think all this information, the insights from people with lived experience, it's got to be helpful. And I just want to thank you for your time, for coming up here today for this. I haven't mentioned this before, but we first met many years ago when you came on an Everest Base Camp trek to Nepal back in 2013. So I guess these conversations were never on the radar. But really interesting. I think it's fantastic what you've been doing. Good luck with the book, and I'm sure there'll probably be future books.
Oh, there's already one that's pretty much almost at the final stages of being written, so that should be coming out soon.
Fantastic.
That one is exactly about late diagnosis, ADHD and perimenopause, and the interlink between them. So it's going to be a bigger one. As
we mentioned, there's so many people affected. All women, the perimenopause, menopause, but ADHD, I think it's like roughly 3% of the population. So that's a lot of people. But I think even more important is for everybody else, the other 97%, just to have a bit more understanding. Thanks so much. And thank you for watching. And please go to the website, LivedInsights.com, fill in the questionnaires. You can see the results and insights, and check out the other episodes.